Before the season started, I picked the Tennessee Titans to finish second in the AFC South, and it was one of those predictions I got right. I didn't expect them to go 7-9 and finish second in the AFC South and be 3 games ahead of the next team. That I did not expect. The AFC South ended up being a really bad division this year, and the Titans were the second best out of that bad division. They did start off relatively well, starting off at 3-1, looking like they were going to be a contender for the playoffs, and then still after the midway point of the season were 4-4, so they looked like they had a shot. But they went 3-5 the rest of the way, finished 7-9, excuse me, and ended up having the 11th overall pick in this upcoming May's 2014 NFL Draft. I was a little surprised to see the organization move on from Mike Munchak, a guy who was a Hall of Fame lineman for the old Oilers, been with the organization for over 30 years. Maybe the organization felt it was time for them to move on. It sounds like the reports were that Munchak could have saved his job if he would have thrown his friends under the bus and fired them. He didn't want to do that. He stuck by his friends, and it cost him. It's admirable. A lot of us in that position would have said, back that bus up and let me throw all my friends under it so you could run them over. I'm not giving up my spot. Frankly, that's maybe what Munchak should have done. But it is what it is. Now it leaves the Tennessee Titans as an organization in a state of flux because we don't know yet who their next head coach is going to be, and we don't know what direction they're going to go with an organization. They have plenty of offseason questions. The first one surrounds Jake Locker. The 8th overall pick in the 2011 draft at times has flashed some ability to be the man in Tennessee, but his biggest problem is he just can't stay healthy. And I talk about this with my Bears all the time, that Jay Cutler is not a franchise quarterback, and the single biggest reason, even though there are others, the single biggest reason is because 4 straight years now, Jay Cutler has not answered the bell for all 16 games. To be a franchise quarterback, you must be able to be counted on, to be depended upon, to lead the way on the field all 16 games of the regular season, something Jake Locker just flat out didn't do. Played 7 games in 2013. And with Locker as a starter, you start off 3-1, and things are looking pretty good. And then they look not so good. You got Chris Johnson, who had a 1,000-yard season, but it seems like he might be getting to the end of the road in his time in Tennessee, and it looks like he might be pushing his way out of Tennessee, bitching and moaning about not being utilized enough and even though he gets a ton of carries and a ton of opportunities. Maybe he should have just played a little bit better the past couple of seasons. He did go for over 1,000 yards, but he has a huge cap figure next year, and I'm not sure a new coaching staff is going to want to put up with him, so he might be gone. You look at Kendall Wright, their 20th overall selection in the 2012 NFL Draft, had a nice year, going for over 1,000 yards receiving. On the defensive side of the football, Jarrell Casey had a breakthrough season at defensive tackle, finishing with 10.5 sacks. The point I'm getting at here is there is some talent there. You look at the wide receiving core. Justin Hunter, their second-round pick from this past draft, definitely flashed some moments where he looked like he could be a big play wide receiver, even though they were in small doses. Delaney Walker stepped in and filled the shoes of Jared Cook at tight end relatively well. Chance Warmack played solid at offensive guard this year, their first-round pick out of Alabama. There are pieces on that defense to really like. Jarrell Casey, like I mentioned before. I like their linebacking core with Brown and Ayers in particular. Werner and McCourty are a nice young tandem of corners. There are some pieces here in Tennessee. This is not a bad team. They're not great. They're missing some star power. They're missing some real impact players, some real difference makers. But this is a team with a nice core of talent that with the right coach and a good solid draft class could be definitely contending for the playoffs in 2014. But one thing they will have to do is do better in the division. They finished 2-4 against other AFC South teams. 2-4. 2 losses to the Colts and a loss apiece to both the Texans and the Jaguars. You have to do better in your division if you're going to sit there and think and even entertain the thought of going to the playoffs. So looking at this offseason, you would assume that mercurial, troubled wide receiver Kenny Britt is going to be gone. He was barely utilized this year. I'd be stunned if he was brought back. It'd take damn near an act of God for that to happen. I would anticipate Chris Johnson will probably be released because Chris Johnson's not going to rework his contract. I probably wouldn't if I was him either. It sounds like David Stewart, the right tackle for the Titans for many years, is probably going to be gone, which leaves a need on the offensive line, leaves a need at running back. You look at it, there could be questions about whether Jake Locker is going to be back in 2014, and if it is he going to be given the keys one more time to show whether or not he could be the franchise guy, be able to stay healthy, be able to be depended upon, or are the Titans going to go after a veteran quarterback not named Ryan Fitzpatrick in the offseason? Are they going to draft one in the first round or two in the 2014 NFL draft? A lot of questions here. You look at the defensive side of the football. Alteron Werner is a free agent. He's going to command a big salary, especially playing a premium position like cornerback. Are they going to be willing to pay him? A lot of things that are, yet to be determined. The key to this offseason, though, is for the Titans to get the right head coach that can come in and get the most out of the talent that's there, that has a good eye for talent, that can work hand in hand with the front office to bring in some real impact players and difference makers to this roster that is not all that bad. And when you look at the Titans picking 11th overall, they're sitting in a relatively good spot in the draft. Now, I might sit there and say, they're not in the top 5 or 7 picks, so they might miss out on the big-time stars, but so far, in my analysis of the 2014 draft, is a lot of the people that everybody else is very high on, I'm not high on, and I'm high on some other people that everybody else is not. And you know how the draft process works every year. Certain players drop, certain players rise out of nowhere, what have you. What the Titans need, in my opinion, right now, is they need to get that defense ramped up just a little bit more. Because if they do, it's a playoff caliber defense. And they can make the playoffs with okay quarterback play, an okay running game, some weapons on the outside at wide receiver if their defense is beefed up. And they need to have that defense beefed up, especially playing in a division ultimately where they're going to have to face Andrew Luck twice a year. Potentially having to face a young quarterback in both Houston and Jacksonville down the road. The Titans need to take that approach of being kind of contrarian and counterculture to everybody else in their division and become a defense-first organization. And they could do that, but the one thing they need above all else is they need more pass rush. Their pass rush was anemic in 2013. Former 2010 first-round pick Derek Morgan had like 6 sacks. He hasn't lived up to the expectations and the hype that he had coming out of Georgia Tech. They need somebody other than Jarrell Casey to consistently generate a pass rush out of that front four. That's where somebody like potentially an Anthony Barr would come into play, maybe a Coney Ely from Missouri. The bottom line is that if they re-sign Werner, they keep their other pieces in the secondary intact, like Bernard Pollard, etc. They have a nice linebacking core. They could probably use an upgraded middle linebacker over Foyku, but they really need 2 impact edge rushers in that front four. If they get that and they could pair them with Jarrell Casey, this is a Titans defense that gets a lot better in a hurry and potentially keeps this organization sniffing the playoffs throughout all of 2014.